Welcome back. You're watching Week in One. A shock decision this week in the courts as Shrien Dewani was acquitted of murder charges. He had been accused of masterminding his wife Annie's murder while they were on honeymoon in Cape Town 4 years ago. Annie Dewani's family say the justice system has failed them. They're not the only ones, though, who have greeted the ruling with disbelief.
Activists clearly unhappy that Shrien Dewani is now a free man and may never give his version of what happened on the night his wife Annie was killed.
You don't have money, then you go to jail. But as soon as you got money, you go free. I'm calling for justice for Annie.
After a 4-year wait, the Indosha family have left the Western Cape High Court shattered.
There are some protesters out here who have been following this trial since day one. Many screaming justice for Annie as a very teary Indosha family leaves the Western Cape High Court now to return to Sweden without having the questions they wanted answered by Shrien Dewani.
The family feels the justice system has failed them.
Don't worry, I'll take you to the bed. I can come it out.
We waited patiently for 4 years to hear what really happened to Annie and to hear the full story of what happened to our dearest little sister. All we wanted was to hear all the events, and the hope of actually finding that out has kept us as a family going.
All that Annie's family wanted was for Shrien to take the stand.
We never heard the full story of Shrien. We heard that Shrien has led a double life and that Annie knew nothing about it. And we just wish that Shrien had been honest with us, and especially with Annie. The knowledge of not ever knowing what happened to my dearest little sister on the 13th of November 2010. That's gonna haunt me, my family, my brother, my parents, for the rest of our lives.
Shrien Dewani and his family are not commenting at all. The ruling is a bitter blow for the National Prosecuting Authority.
We are obviously disappointed. It was not one of the things that we had set out to achieve. But of course, we are always alive to the fact that, the evidence that was going to be led was going to be relying on 3 people in the main, that who themselves were very much involved in the commission of the crime.
It's unlikely the NPA will lodge an appeal against Judge Traverso's decision. For them, the 3.5-year extradition battle and millions spent have been in vain. Leanne Jansen at the Western Cape High Court.
Well, Shrien Dewani is getting on with his life. The British businessman is now back in the UK. It's a new chapter for Dewani, but his wife's family are still struggling to find closure. Here's Leanne Jansen with a special report on the unanswered questions in this landmark case.
The accused is found not guilty on this charge.
It was a trial that gripped audiences not only in South Africa but the UK too. But after conflicting testimony and unreliable witnesses, Shrien Dewani is a free man. His dead wife's family has been left with more questions than before the trial even started. The obvious one: why was Annie Dewani killed?
We feel that today the justice system has failed us, and we came here to look for answers and find out the truth of what happened to our little sister Annie.
Judge Jeanette Traverso made it clear she didn't believe the version of the convicted killers, that Shrien Dewani ordered the hit on his wife.
And each one of them was a self-confessed liar who continued lying to this court.
But then what was the motive for her killing? Was it really just a botched hijacking?
Despite CCTV footage here at the Cape Grace Hotel showing shuttle driver Zola Tsongo accept what appears to be money from Shrien Dewani after his wife's murder, the state was never able to disprove Dewani's version of events, that this was a thank you gesture rather than blood money. And now the real motive behind Annie Dewani's murder will probably never be known. And who actually fired the shot that killed Annie? Hulile Mgeni went down as the shooter, but gunpowder residue was found on the glove of co-accused Mziwa Madoda Qwabe.
Does this mean the state had the wrong shooter all along?
This is where shuttle driver Zola Tongo's car was abandoned. If you believe his version that he was paid to set up the hit, then you have to ask yourself the question, why would he risk his expensive car, a car he used to make a living, for a mere 5,000 rand?
And what about the man who has thus far evaded prosecution? Monde Mbolombo is the man who allegedly set up the hit. His testimony put the others behind bars, but he's now admitted to lying under oath. Shrien Dewani too has 3 different versions of what happened that night and how it came about that he exited the hijacked vehicle. So many different versions of the night that left Annie Dewani dead in the back of a Volkswagen Shrien. But which one is the truth? Leanne Jansen, Cape Town.
Oscar Pistorius could yet be convicted of murder. That's if the state's appeal is successful. On Wednesday, prosecutors won the right to challenge his conviction in the appeals court. Pistorius was found guilty of negligently killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. He's currently serving a 5-year jail term, but he could be paroled in 10 months.
Just over 6 weeks ago, Oscar Pistorius was sent to jail for killing his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Now, Judge Thokozile Masipa has granted the prosecution the right to appeal his conviction for culpable homicide.
The following questions of law are reserved for the consideration of the Supreme Court of Appeal. 1. Whether the principles of dolus eventualis were correctly applied to the accepted facts and the conduct of the accused, including error in objecto. 2. Whether the court correctly conceived and applied the legal principles pertaining to circumstantial evidence and or pertaining to multiple defenses by an accused.
The NPA is satisfied that justice has been done.
We feel that, there's certain legal issues that need clarity from the highest court in the land. And, we were of the view that there were errors that were made by the Honorable Judge in this matter. And unfortunately for us, she agreed with us on the main one, which was a conviction on culpable homicide. She was of the view that, another court looking at the same matter might come to a different conclusion.
The Steenkamps say they've accepted the decision as God's will, while the Pistorius family says it will respect the court's ruling. But by the time this case makes it to the appeals court, the athlete may be eligible for parole. If the Supreme Court of Appeal convicts Pistorius of murder, the court will implement a more appropriate sentence than the 5 years that he's currently serving. And the state is likely to argue that it should be at least 15 years. Pagamile Hlubi, Pretoria.
An inquest has found President Jacob Zuma's son is to blame for the death of a young woman in a car crash. But the state still has to decide whether or not to charge Duduzane Zuma with culpable homicide. The magistrate says that Zuma could have taken several steps to avoid colliding with the minibus taxi. The accident in February this year left 27-year-old Phumzile Dube dead.
Duduzane Zuma's lawyers argued there was nothing he could have done to avoid his fatal crash with a minibus. He'd claimed he'd hit a puddle and lost control of his Porsche. But Magistrate Lalita Chetty has rejected this defence and found Zuma's negligence caused the accident. She says he should have slowed down in the rainy conditions on the night of the crash. Chetty, however, did not find that Zuma had been speeding. And it's not a sure thing that the state will charge him with culpable homicide.
The Director of Public Prosecutions will have to study the whole record. And as I said, if there is anything that he wants further, any further investigation that he wants conducted, he will then so direct. But if he's of the view that there's sufficient evidence to prosecute, we definitely make that decision.
Duduzane Zuma's lawyers are also very likely to make full representations to the Director of Public Prosecutions about why they believe he should not be charged with culpable homicide. Phumzile Dube's brother says the ruling has given the family some sense of closure, and they have no ill will towards Duduzane Zuma.
And how do you feel towards him?
I don't have a bad feeling because he didn't do it deliberately. I can't expect him to go to jail also.
The Dube family's lawyer says Phumzile's death has left them financially and emotionally devastated. They're planning to submit a claim to the Road Accident Fund and hope this will enable the family to look after Dube's young daughter and mother. Karen Morn, Johannesburg.
And just before we say goodbye for this edition of the show, the tiny Principality of Monaco has been treated to a double dose of royal joy. Princess Charlene of Monaco has given birth to twins, a little boy and a little girl. Church bells rang and cannon shots were fired to celebrate their birth. The prince is next in line to the throne despite being born 2 minutes after his sister. Charlene was a champion South African swimmer before becoming Princess of Monaco 3 years ago. Her parents still live in Benoni and say mom and babies are doing just fine. And congratulations to the new mom as well. On that note, we're going to end this week's show. Until next time, thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.